worked with parents, and secondly, the substantial increase in hours beyond what we're doing now that we're planning. The half-day place ceases to be relevant when children are eligible to 30 hours per week. I've also tasked my officials to look in the shorter term at how we address these issues that some parents are having. But for goodness sake, this is a massive success story. We've gone from an entitlement of children to 412.5 hours a year free childcare to 600 hours, and we've extended the eligibility for 2-year-olds as well. So we'll continue to make the progress from the rather derisory position we inherited from the last administration.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister says it's getting better. It's not. It's getting worse. Today's report confirms that fewer than 1 in 6 councils in Scotland are providing enough childcare for working parents. That's down from 1 in 4 last year. On the SNP's watch, things are getting worse for families trying to juggle family life. 1 year ago today, this Parliament gave parents of 3- and 4-year-olds the right to 600 hours of nursery care. We supported that. We voted for it. But today's report makes it clear that parents across Scotland are unable to access that right that we gave them. It's true that 6 weeks ago the First Minister met the Fair Funding for Our Kids group, and they haven't heard from her since. I spoke to them this morning, and in fact, Jenny Gorovin from Fair Funding for Our Kids said they give us supportive words but precious little action. So there we go. They told her that thousands of kids in Scotland are missing out on childcare and that parents are having to give up their jobs as a result. The Fair Funding campaign asked for an audit of delivery of the 600 hours childcare policy so that we can see the scale of the problem and fix it. Will the First Minister deliver that audit today?
First Minister.
We will continue to monitor and audit this policy. That's why I can stand here and tell Kezia Dugdale that the last statistics showed a registration of 3- and 4-year-olds at 98.5%. And I'm sure Fair Funding for Our Kids will welcome the fact that since the meeting I had with them on the 9th of January, I have tasked my officials, and they are looking not at the longer-term solutions, because we know what they are, but at the shorter-term solutions to the particular issues some parents, and I stress some parents, are having. I would have thought Kezia Dugdale would have welcomed that approach from government. But, you know, I know in this week of all weeks, Labour are having some difficulty getting their figures to add up properly. But, you know, there is no way that even the innumerate Labour Party can describe an increase in funded childcare from 412.5 hours a year, which is what they provided, to 600 hours a year, which is what we are providing, as a deterioration. That is a significant improvement, and Labour, frankly, who never ever made it a budget priority in any of the discussions they had with John Swinney, should be welcoming. But I don't think it goes far enough. I don't think that goes far enough, which is why I am committed to moving to a situation where our 3- and 4-year-olds and eligible 2-year-olds don't get 600 hours a year. They get 1,140 hours a year, 30 hours a week. That's my ambition. When will Labour get round to backing it?
Kezia Dugdale. Order. Ms Dugdale. Order.
The First Minister says we've never ever prioritised it, yet it was in our budget ask last year. It's just nonsense. And she is celebrating the success of a policy. She should try and celebrate it in front of parents in Glasgow who are telling her that there are thousands of children across Scotland unable to access the right that her government gave her. Ms
Cunningham.
She should look those parents in the eye and tell them they've never had it so good. They know it's not true. We know it's not true. And I think actually the First Minister knows it's not true as well. Parents across Scotland have one simple question for the First Minister. Isn't it about time she made good on her childcare promises?
First Minister.
Tell you what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to look Kezia Dugdale in the eye and remind her who runs Glasgow City Council. If Kezia Dugdale If Kezia Dugdale has got issues with the delivery of the childcare policy in the City of Glasgow, I suggest she should make an appointment and speak to her Labour colleagues who run Glasgow City Council. Now, 98.5% of 3- and 4-year-olds registered for free childcare. I did look parents in Glasgow who have frustrations about the delivery of this in the eye, and I committed to them that we would work to deal with those issues. But no matter how hard Kezia Dugdale tries, and no, she isn't asking about the health service this week, I wonder why. But no matter how hard Kezia Dugdale tries to manipulate the figures, she cannot get away from the fact that an increase from 412.5 hours of free childcare to 600 hours is a significant step forward under this government. And if we are re-elected, and let's face it, while there's no complacency, all of the polls today suggest we may well be, then we will take that to 30 hours a week for 3- and 4-year-olds and eligible 2-year-olds. This government has delivered on childcare, and we will continue to do so.
Question 2. Ruth Davidson. Order. Ms Davidson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister when she will next meet the Secretary of State for Scotland.
First Minister.
No immediate plans.
Ms Davidson.
Thank you. Presiding Officer, on December the 11th, the First Minister told me in this chamber that when it came to education, she would always keep an open mind about educating our children. She added, and I quote from the official record, "I will listen to ideas from wherever they come." Well, there's an idea out this morning. The parents of St Joseph's Primary School in Milngavie are campaigning to keep their school open. They want to take the school out of the local authority control and to run it as a trust. They insist that education elsewhere in the area will be unaffected. They just want their children to get the education that they believe in the town where they live. So, given what she said in December of last year, will the First Minister today commit to meet the parents, to listen to their concerns and to examine their proposal with an open mind?
First Minister.
Well, as I think you've just heard from my exchange with Kezia Dugdale, I will meet parents who are interested in and concerned about their children's education, whatever the issue is that they want to discuss with me. I will, and I repeat this today, also listen to any ideas and suggestions that are put forward. And if I don't agree with the particular suggestions, or if they cannot be delivered, I will look parents in the eye and explain to them why that is the case. In terms of the specific issue Ruth Davidson raises about St Joseph's Primary, and I should say I well understand the concerns that any parent will have for their children's education if a school that they value is going to be closed. The self-governing schools model, of course, was introduced into Scotland by the Tories. Only 2 schools took up the option of being self-governing, and of course that legislation was repealed by the Standards in Scotland Schools, etc. Act 2000 by this Parliament. So that is the position, but I will be very happy to discuss the issue with representatives of parents if they so wish. On the wider issue of listening and being very keen for ideas, I gave Ruth Davidson an open invitation to send me ideas. I may be wrong, but I'm not aware if she has done so. But I, last week, talked about the need to close the attainment gap in schools and talked about the willingness I have to look at best practice where that exists. I think we can find some best practice from the London Challenge. I think there is other best practice from Ontario, for example. So I am absolutely determined that we continue to deliver the best education for our children, and where there are challenges in our education system, we work hard to address them.
Ms Davidson.
I'm pleased with the First Minister's response because this is a simple case to understand. What we've got are parents who are energised, enthusiastic and positive about their local community. They have a genuine, worked-out plan to improve the schooling of their children. And they're being faced, so far, with a government wall which simply tells them we know best when it doesn't know best. Because there is a massive performance gap that the First Minister has recognised between our poorest and richest areas. Scotland is stagnating in international league tables, and parents are watching in horror as this government and councils fight over the basic task of hiring teachers for local schools. And it's frankly not good enough. Last week, we welcomed the First Minister when she moved an inch by backing the London Challenge. but Scotland needs her to move a mile. We need a parent power law which will allow schools to opt out of local authority control if they so wish. So why can't the First Minister today back that?
First Minister.
Can I firstly just point out to Ruth Davidson, and she may find this helpful, and again I think I'm right in this, but if I'm getting this wrong in any way then I apologise in advance, but I'm pretty sure the council, East Dunbartonshire, that is closing the school she's talking about, has the Conservatives as part of the administration. So perhaps her first port of call might not be to me, but to her colleagues in East Dunbartonshire Council. But on the general issue, I mean, Ruth Davidson is well aware of the position in terms of grant-aided schools. In terms of grant-aided schools in Scotland, the Scottish Government currently funds 8 grant-aided schools. 7 of those are special schools because they tend to be for national centres of provision, and I've already outlined the position in terms of the repeal of the former legislation. But I've said I'd be happy to speak to those parents and perhaps, as well as discussing this issue, advise them on how they can persuade the Tories in their local council to take a different decision on the school. In terms of the other issues Ruth Davidson raises, can I just say in terms of teacher numbers, I make no apology for drawing a line in the sand in terms of teacher numbers. I want to maintain the numbers of teachers working in our schools because I see that as important to raising attainment. And I would hope both Labour and the Tories would tell their own councils that they should be backing that as well.
This is the question. Cara Hilton.
It was revealed this week that Longannet Power Station in my constituency is facing renewed threats to its future, with talks apparently breaking down between Scottish Power and the National Grid. Given that Longannet employs hundreds of workers in West Fife, and given that the plant is responsible for 25% of the power we use in Scotland, what action is the First Minister taking to get all the parties back round the table to secure a secure future for Longannet, for the local community in Kincardine and for Scotland's future energy needs?
First Minister.
I very much share the concerns of the member about the future of Longannet, and I think she is absolutely right to be raising this in the chamber today. She is probably aware that I wrote to the Prime Minister on Monday asking him, making sure he is aware of the serious threat to the future of Longannet. To put this in a nutshell, Longannet is under imminent threat because of the costs it faces in connecting to the grid. It costs it £40 million, where a power station in London or the South East would get paid £4 million to do it. It is deeply unfair, and the UK Government, in the interest of Longannet, in the interest of the people who work there, but also in the wider interest of Scotland's security of energy supply, really needs to intervene and help us get this sorted out.
Alison Johnson.
Thank you. It transpired this week that the 16th century old Parliament building in Edinburgh was transferred from the collective ownership of my constituents to Scottish ministers without knowledge or recompense to the Common Good Fund. Edinburgh Council failed in their role as steward of this fund, but are now seeking to resolve the situation. I'd like to ask the First Minister to assure my constituents that any requests from Edinburgh Council to restore ownership of this common good asset to them will be considered seriously and favourably.
First Minister. Thank you.
Well, can I firstly just very briefly state the background to this? I'm sure Alison Johnson is aware of it. The Scottish Government's position is that title to Parliament Hall was taken by Scottish ministers in good faith, and it was done so with the full knowledge and consent of the Council. So the Scottish Court Service and the Faculty of Advocates therefore have now got good title to that property. Of course, I am more than happy to ask the relevant Minister, Marco Biagi, to meet and discuss this with Edinburgh City Council, but there is no fault here, as far as I can see, on the part of the Scottish Government, and of course title has since been passed on. So it may very well be that there is no easy solution to restore title to Edinburgh City Council, but I think any questions on how this has arisen probably have to be directed to the Council.
Question number 3, Will Rennie.
To ask the First Minister what issues will be discussed at the next meeting of the Cabinet.
First Minister.
Matters of importance to the people of Scotland.
Will Rennie.
I want to look at what senior police officers have been saying recently. They told us stop and search for under-12s had ended, but it had not. They told us the numbers released were wrong, but privately admitted they were right. The police told us they were forced to release the information, and that was wrong too. Is this really